Girl, we're gonna need more wine.
A journalist at heart with a voice that is unfiltered, informed, and undeniably mine, where lived experiences meet perspective, refined, intentional, and unapologetic, told with clarity, and delivered with class. This is The Edit by Denasia and Ruth.
Being able to name and identify my trauma while learning and understanding the languages of that emotional healing helped me to understand that it was definitely time for me to release. You already know where this is going. You know, the version of me that I kept performing long after she stopped fitting in. Not because she was bad or broken, she was exhausted. And I realized that that version of who I was and who I'd become as a result of all the trauma that I endured made me a shell of myself. And so, with that newfound knowledge, it helped me understand that that version of me was no longer sustainable. I didn't outgrow her overnight, but there definitely became a point where I stopped forcing her. We had to let her go. If you don't remember the version of myself that I discussed in my last episode, let me remind you. My responses look like over empathy, saying yes to protect connections, shrinking, becoming extremely hyper independent, the people pleaser, being the fixer, searching for love and validation in literally all of the wrong places. There was a version of myself that I once recognized as beautiful, courageous, outgoing, creative, free spirited, charismatic, open hearted, whimsical, bossy, magnetic, and full of life. This is me. I'm her. The version of you thought you lost. I realized pretty early on that she's the one who needed protecting more than anything because I was not raised in an environment that catered to those aspects of my personality, at least I felt. And those are the ones that truly mattered to me. They didn't know how to hold her. But you do. You do now. In realizing this, I also recognized that nobody was coming to save me. No one was coming to protect me. And so, in my own faulted way, I became that for myself the best way I knew how. I became malleable, impressionable, timid, and shy, adaptable. I became the girl who could make herself small enough to fit in and bright enough just to be chosen. For what? Exactly. And I performed her so well that even I didn't notice the shame creeping in when I began taking a backseat to the version of myself who I once embodied that would have unapologetically taken the wheel. I should have been driving this whole time. I became a version of myself that just made sense to everyone else around me. Never again, ever. So much of the initial stages of healing and divine guidance for me was actually happening inside my head and not inside my body. I was revising and I was restoring things way before I was embodying them. Because while I was recognizing, I still hadn't quite given my body permission to make the necessary changes. Head first, body later. But we're here now. I noticed this shift in late 2019 upon graduating the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. And so it was then that I gave myself permission. I was ready to tackle everything head on, but during that revision season, my trauma was actually reactivated. And so this became a pretty harsh turning point for me. I lost my childhood best friend in March of 2020, and everything began to quickly spiral. I remember being completely inebriated in the bathroom of an Airbnb on the 21st floor on the night of her funeral to what then felt like the point of no return. This single event was just enough to pull me back into that old version of myself that I thought I had outgrown. For years to come, I was only able to access my logical knowledge because I still hadn't allowed for embodiment. Logic is not embodiment. You needed more, girl. I brought back the old version of myself without shame. You did what you had to do. No shame in that. I learned to live in my shadow and simply romanticize a version of myself that I felt I would never get back to. The many attempts to be my once youthful and magnetic self again couldn't be reality. It felt out of reach and out of touch. Much to my surprise, I did not expect my 25th birthday to be the catalyst. I had already canceled out that version of myself, so It wasn't hard. I knew that, much like my parents, I could never embody the energy for real sustainable change. Because that's what it would actually take in order for real healing to happen. And so the self pity of depression would come, great loss, and I would grieve for not only them, but for me. Grief, it's a part of becoming. We didn't know it yet. 3 months later, I got into a pretty bad argument with my then boyfriend at the time about what our next steps would be. And it was then that it all came full circle for me. I'm not my parents, but guess what? By this point, I'd realized I'd become a lot like them. Truth hurts, but it heals. I tried to ignore this hard truth about myself, but it was difficult. So much so that this actual argument is what led me to seek out therapy to begin with. I knew that with this decision would come an even greater loss because either the people in my life would grow with me or I would outgrow them. Growth has casualties, and I'm not a gambler, but I decided that this decision was well worth the risk. It was a risk that I was willing to take. Letting go felt like grief. It felt like mourning someone I once loved, but knew I grew to hate. It also felt a lot like relief because while letting go didn't fix everything, it did create space. Space for softness, space for honesty, and space for becoming. I also had to admit that this was a pretty harsh breaking point for real change, even if nobody around me had realized it yet, because letting go was not about rejecting her. It was about acknowledging that she was built from trauma, survival, and patterns that no longer served me. She did her job. She kept you alive. She kept us alive. You know? She helped me navigate chaos. She helped me feel love in rooms where I wasn't safe. She helped me survive seasons that I didn't understand. And I'm grateful for the girl who protected me because she kept me alive. But I don't need her to lead me anymore because I'm learning to lead myself. And she cannot and will not help me grow. Much like climbing Mount Everest, this was not the summit of my journey to self development, self improvement, and growth. It was merely a base camp, one stop of recognition and completion on my quest. It required acts of forward movement and growth that also required me to stop performing, protecting, and romanticizing the girl who was built from survival. We were done performing. Self development is self permission. This was not an emotional release, it was an intentional release. This was the rebrand, not a surface level makeover. Becoming my best self was not a checklist, it was a series of brave acts. The rebrand is internal, it's who you're becoming. If you're in this season of releasing old identities, old patterns, and old versions of yourself, I want you to know that you're not alone. This part is tender. This part is emotional, but this part is necessary.